You ever wake up, pour yourself a cup of coffee, glance out your window, and realize that your biggest neighborhood villain isn't a stray raccoon or the kid who keeps ding-dong ditching, but an HOA president named Karen? Yeah, that's where this story starts. Now, let me be crystal clear. This wasn't just any ramp. This wasn't some half-baked, slapped-together plywood contraption wobbling like a toddler's first steps. No. This ramp was a masterpiece. I'm talking city-approved, code-compliant, and color-coordinated perfection. We hired a licensed contractor, checked every zoning regulation twice, and even went so far as to color-match the paint with the house trim. Basically, if ramps could model, this one would have been strutting down a runway. But there's something you should know about people like Karen. They don't see beauty in compliance. They see threats in decency. The moment she laid eyes on that ramp, you could practically see her blood pressure spike. She saw it as a violation of the neighborhood aesthetic, whatever that means, because last I checked, accessibility isn't an eyesore. Within 48 hours, a bright yellow notice appeared on our front door like a scarlet letter for homeowners. Violation number 1, unauthorized modification. The first of many. By the end of the month, our front porch looked like a Post-it note factory exploded. 5 notices. 5! And each one was more absurd than the last. Apparently, the ramp was too visible, too modern, and my personal favorite, too reflective of a non-standard elevation. Translation: Karen needed a hobby. My sister Sarah, the actual homeowner, the one in the wheelchair, she's calm like that, patient. Graceful, the kind of person who could turn a DMV line into a TED Talk on mindfulness. But even she was getting tired. See, Sarah wasn't just any resident trying to keep the peace. She was quietly running the entire state. Yeah, the governor herself, undercover as a suburban neighbor. She wanted privacy, a break from politics, and a community where she could recover from the accident that put her in that wheelchair 6 months ago. But Karen, she was on a mission. You'd think being HOA president meant managing landscaping disputes and reminding people to take down Christmas lights before July. Nope. To Karen, it meant staging a full-scale crusade against one ramp that allegedly jeopardized property values. Because clearly, the biggest threat to suburban harmony isn't inflation or rising taxes, it's an ADA-compliant incline. I tried to reason with her once. She stood in her driveway, phone in hand, snapping pictures like she was collecting evidence for a true crime documentary. Section 8, paragraph 3, she chirped, waving her rulebook like a wand. All external modifications must be approved by the board. I asked if the board was aware that federal law outranks HOA bylaws. She blinked. The concept of hierarchy clearly wasn't her strong suit. At first, I thought it was petty power tripping. Then I realized, no, this was obsession. Karen had the energy of someone who'd been told no one too many times in life and decided to channel that trauma into tormenting neighbors. But here's where she really miscalculated. She assumed my sister was a pushover, just another homeowner too scared to push back. What she didn't know was that this so-called ordinary resident wrote half the laws she was breaking. It started as a ramp. Just a ramp. But in reality, it was a trigger, a fuse waiting to be lit. Because every petty act of control, every notice taped to our door, every picture taken in secret, it all piled up into something far bigger than a neighborhood spat. Karen thought she was enforcing order. What she was really doing was building the foundation of her own downfall. Because when you pick a fight with a wheelchair ramp, you're not just questioning someone's design choices, you're questioning their right to exist comfortably in their own home. And when you do that to a governor, let's just say the sequel writes itself. Karen thought she could paper cut her way to victory with violation notices, but the only thing she was about to bulldoze was her entire reputation.
You ever wake up thinking it's going to be a peaceful day, birds chirping, sun shining, coffee brewing, and then suddenly realize your driveway has turned into a construction site of chaos? Because that's exactly what happened to me. I was halfway through my cereal when I heard it. A low rumble, the kind that shakes windows and souls. At first I thought it was thundered. Nope. I look outside, and there she is, Karen, in her signature red blazer, heels sinking into our lawn, clutching a stack of papers like they're the Dead Sea Scrolls. And parked right behind her, a bright yellow bulldozer, engine roaring like it's auditioning for Fast and Furious HOA drift. Now, let's pause here, because in any normal, rational universe, you'd think the sight of a bulldozer in front of a wheelchair ramp would make people stop and go, maybe this is a bad look. But not Karen. No, Karen was thriving. She looked like she'd just been nominated for a Nobel Prize in neighborhood control. I burst out the door, still in my pajamas, mind you, and shout, "What do you think you're doing?" She spins around, fake smile locked in place, voice dipped in passive aggression. "Oh good, you're home," she says, like she's handing me cookies, not a demolition order. She waves a document in my face like a villain monologuing in Act 3. This ramp violates Section 4.23 of the HOA guidelines, and as president, it's my duty to maintain our community's aesthetic integrity. Ma'am, it's a wheelchair ramp, not a neon billboard for a nightclub. I tell her we have city permits, official approval, everything signed and sealed. She smirks, and I swear I saw lightning flash behind her. The city isn't the HOA, dear. You ever hear someone say something so dumb with so much confidence it physically hurts? That was Karen. She actually believed her suburban fiefdom outranked the law. Meanwhile, the bulldozer operator looks more confused than a GPS with no signal. He's checking his clipboard, glancing between us like even he knows he's about to star in a lawsuit. And Karen's just standing there, tapping her watch, barking orders like she's directing traffic at the world's worst parade. I try calling Sarah, straight to voicemail, of course. She's in a closed-door budget meeting, blissfully unaware her house is about to turn into a demolition derby. So I do the only thing I can. Hit record. If Karen wants to stage a circus, fine, I'll sell tickets. Karen, I hold my phone steady. What you're doing right now is illegal. You're violating the Americans with Disabilities Act, federal accessibility codes, and about 15 ethical boundaries. Her smile twitches. The HOA is exempt. No HOA is exempt from federal law, I shout, loud enough to wake the neighbors, which, judging by the curtains rustling, I did. Our elderly neighbor, Mr. Rodriguez, peeks out, takes one look, and retreats like, "Nope, not today, Satan." But Karen's unfazed. She waves her hand dramatically, signaling the bulldozer like she's leading a marching band. The machine roars, gears grind, and my stomach drops. "Karen, this is your last chance," I warn, trying to sound like an action hero instead of someone whose blood pressure is spiking. She tilts her head, all faux empathy. The only mistake, she purrs, was allowing this eyesore in the first place. You ever see someone drunk on power they think they're invincible? That was Karen, sipping arrogance through a straw. She gives the nod. The bulldozer blade lowers. The ramp, the one that my sister uses to get into her own home, starts to crumble. The sound is awful. Metal scraping concrete, a horrible grinding screech that feels personal. Chunks fall away, dust fills the air, and Karen? She's standing there smiling, like she just won the HOA Olympics. But what she didn't see was me live streaming the entire thing. Or the growing crowd of neighbors with their phones out. Or the fact that just down the road, black SUVs were speeding our way because Sarah's security detail got my text. Karen thought she was staging a victory. What she was actually doing was confessing in 1080, 60 frames per second. She thought the sound of that bulldozer was power. But the next thing she would hear would be sirens. And the sound of her career collapsing louder than the ramp she destroyed.
There are moments in life when the universe just delivers. You know, when all those times you held back, stayed polite, followed the rules, suddenly pay off in one glorious, karma-fueled explosion of poetic justice. And for me, that moment came with the rumble of black SUVs turning onto our street. Now, rewind 30 seconds. Karen's still there, basking in her imaginary glory, bulldozer idling like a dragon waiting for orders. Dust in the air, ramp in ruins, neighbors recording from behind half-closed blinds, like they're watching HOA Court Live Edition. And Karen? She's center stage. Red blazer, smug grin, posture of a dictator giving a victory speech. But then, the sound. Low, deep, authority in motion. Black SUVs, tinted windows, emergency lights flashing just enough to say someone powerful is about to end your whole career arc. Karen's head snaps toward the noise, smile faltering for the first time all morning. She squints, confusion blooming on her face, like bad wallpaper. The bulldozer operator freezes mid-lift, one hand still on the lever, eyes darting between Karen and the incoming fleet like, I did not sign up for this level of drama. Neighbors are whispering now. Is that the police? Looks like government cars. Wait, isn't her sister the governor? Yes, the penny drops. The lead SUV screeches to a halt. The back door swings open, and out rolls Sarah. Not as the quiet, recovering neighbor Karen thought she was harassing. No, this is Governor Sarah, blazer on, hair chap, face set to official mode. She wheels forward, flanked by her security detail like a modern-day general, radiating that calm, lethal energy of someone who has absolutely had enough. And the street? Silent. You could hear a leaf fall, if it weren't busy trying to get out of the way. Actually, Mrs. Thompson, Sarah begins, voice firm, steady, echoing across the stunned cul-de-sac. This became a state matter the moment you violated federal disability protection laws. Boom. Direct hit. Karen blinks, mouth slightly open, clutching her folder like it's a shield. You can almost see the thoughts tumbling through her mind. Federal? State? Law? Wait, what do those mean again? Sarah keeps rolling, every inch of her radiating leadership. Not to mention, she adds, you've just destroyed state property. Karen stammers, state property? Sarah raises an eyebrow, the way only a governor, who's also your neighbor, can. Yes. Would you like to see the deed, or shall we discuss the Americans with Disabilities Act first? The neighbors gasp, a chorus of, oh, she didn't, and she did. Phones rise higher, cameras flash. Even Mr. Rodriguez, who was hiding earlier, steps outside with popcorn. Karen's usual army of HOA cronies, yeah, they're backing away like she just started leaking legal liability. One of them even mutters, I told her not to do this, before vanishing behind his hydrangeas. Sarah's head of security steps up beside her, scanning the documents Karen's clutching. These papers are invalid. No court order, no verified notice. This entire action violates Title II of the ADA and multiple state housing statutes. Translation, you're toast, Karen. Karen's voice cracks. I was just following HOA policy. Sarah leans forward, calm and deadly. And HOA policy does not, and will never, override federal law. Somewhere in the distance, a news van screeches to a stop. Because, of course, this kind of suburban drama doesn't stay secret. Within minutes, reporters are jogging up the block, cameras rolling, mics ready. Karen realizes this isn't just embarrassment. This is headlines. And not the local woman wins garden award kind. More like HOA president bulldozes a wheelchair ramp, accidentally declares war on governor. Sarah signals her team. Secure the site. 2 officers move toward the bulldozer, halting it completely. The workers look relieved, one actually whispering, thank God. Karen's frozen, that smug mask fully cracked, revealing sheer panic underneath. And oh yeah, I'm still recording, because if this was justice served, I was filming the buffet. Sarah turns back to her, voice level. You wanted to enforce community standards, Mrs. Thompson. Consider this your lesson. Community means inclusion, not intimidation. The crowd claps. Honest to goodness applause. Not slow, sarcastic clapping. Real clapping. People step forward, nodding, whispering things like, finally, and it's been about time.
And Karen, she's shrinking, inch by inch, under the weight of every stare, every camera, every ounce of justice finally catching up. She wanted power. She got a press conference. She wanted control. She got consequences. She wanted victory. She got Governor Sarah, live, in person, and absolutely done playing nice. Karen thought she'd bulldozed a ramp, but what she'd actually bulldozed was the dam holding back every story her neighbors had been too afraid to tell.
You ever watch a domino line fall? That slow, satisfying cascade, one little push and suddenly everything topples? That's what happened next. Except instead of dominoes, it was neighbors. And instead of a gentle push, it was the sound of federal law slapping HOA nonsense right in the face. See, the second Sarah revealed her governor badge, the power dynamic flipped like a pancake at brunch. Suddenly, all those folks who'd been too scared to speak up, too nervous to challenge Karen's reign of decorative tyranny, they found their voices. And let me tell you, those voices, loud. It started with Mrs. Chen. Now, Mrs. Chen's been in the neighborhood longer than the streetlights. Sweet woman, grows the kind of garden you'd see in a magazine. Roses, lavender, little solar lights shaped like bumblebees. But apparently, medical garden for pain management didn't fit Karen's curb appeal standards. So guess who got a violation notice last spring? Yep, Mrs. Chen. Forced to rip out half her plants because, quote, they create a non-uniform visual. Translation, Karen didn't like color coordination that wasn't her own. Next came Mr. Rodriguez, Vietnam vet, uses a wheelchair for mobility. His son installed a small lift to help him get in and out of the house safely. And guess what Karen did? Slapped him with a $500 fine for unsanctioned modification. Because apparently, ramps and lifts, literal lifelines, were too rebellious for the HOA aesthetic. Then the Bakers spoke up, a young couple with a son on the autism spectrum. They'd built a small sensory-friendly play area in their yard. Soft textures, muted colors, gentle chimes, stuff designed to calm, not bother. But to Karen, it was an unsightly structure. She fined them for it, said it disrupted neighborhood harmony. You know what actually disrupted harmony? Her personality. One by one, the stories poured out. People started pulling receipts, photos, letters, screenshots of Karen's email tirades written in all caps, like she was screaming into the void. Stuff she'd hidden, bullied, or buried under bylaws suddenly saw daylight. Neighbors who'd barely waved at each other before were now united not by geography, but by grievance. Because nothing bonds a community faster than a common enemy. Sarah, still in her governor mode, called an impromptu meeting right there on our front lawn. The destroyed ramp behind her, like a monument to HOA hypocrisy. She invited everyone to share, calmly, clearly, and on record. And let me tell you, these folks came prepared. Mrs. Jenkins from down the street showed her old notices, one for having a wind chime, noise violation, one for growing sunflowers taller than regulation height, excessive vertical display, and my favorite, a written warning because her doormat said, "Go away." Apparently, it didn't meet welcoming neighborhood standards. People were furious, but not in a mob way. No, this was organized, focused. It was like watching a courtroom drama where the witnesses finally stop trembling and start testifying. Karen, meanwhile, stood off to the side, clutching her clipboard like it could shield her from the truth. Every new testimony made her flinch. Every photo made her shrink a little more. And that smug grin, long gone. At one point, a kid, couldn't have been older than 12, raised his hand and said, "Miss Karen made my dad take down my treehouse because it was too visible from the street." The crowd gasped. Karen sputtered, "It was a safety hazard." Sarah, cool as ever, replied, "So is untrained leadership with unchecked authority." Boom, mic drop. The thing is, power built on fear only lasts until people stop being afraid. And at that moment, nobody feared Karen.
Not her titles, not her fines, not her laminated binder of doom. What they saw was a woman who'd used her position not to help, but to harm. In standing across from her was a governor, one who'd built her career on protecting people exactly like this community. By the time the meeting ended, something had shifted. Neighbors exchanged numbers, promised to show up for each other, and even joked about starting a support group, survivors of Karen's HOA. You could feel it, this buzz of hope in the air, like fresh paint after years of decay. They realized that HOA wasn't supposed to be a dictatorship, it was supposed to be a community. A place where ramps weren't violations, they were symbols of belonging. And the best part? Someone live-streamed the entire thing. By sunset, #KarenGate was trending. And let me tell you, the internet does not take kindly to HOA tyrants who bulldoze wheelchair ramps. Karen thought she could silence her neighbors with fines and fear. But once the truth came out, the only thing getting shut down was her entire operation.
If karma had an accountant, this is where they'd pull out the receipts. Literal receipts. Because when you spend years running your HOA like a personal piggy bank, guess what happens? Eventually, someone balances the books. By this point, our quiet cul-de-sac had turned into something straight out of CSI Suburbia. Neighbors gathering in little clusters, clutching manila folders, reporters parked like vultures on the street corner. And in the center of it all, Karen. Red blazer looking a little less power suit and a little more crime scene indicator. See, Sarah's legal team, a group of people who could find a typo in the Constitution, had been combing through every HOA record they could get their hands on. And what they uncovered? Oh, buckle up. It was a buffet of budgetary betrayal. Turns out those endless fines Karen had been handing out like party favors, they weren't exactly being used to improve the neighborhood. No new parks, no sidewalk repairs, no landscaping upgrades. Nope, that money was going straight into Karen's dream home makeover fund. We're talking quartz countertops, imported tile, custom blinds so fancy they probably had their own zip code. And get this, a heated driveway. Because apparently the president of the HOA can't be expected to shovel snow like a mere mortal. Her justification? Board-approved community enhancements. Really? Because I don't remember anyone voting to install a spa bathroom in your house, Karen. Maybe the bylaws say improve property values, but I'm pretty sure that means collectively, not personally. Sarah's legal team didn't just stop there. They found consulting fees paid to companies that didn't exist, invoices with mismatched dates, and one gem labeled emergency landscaping, which turned out to be, wait for it, her backyard koi pond. Ma'am, no one needs koi that bad. So Sarah, being the governor and all, decided to do what she does best, hold a press conference. Right there on our front lawn. Broken ramp behind her, cameras rolling, microphones out. She drops the binder on a folding table with a thud that probably echoed in Karen's nightmares. After a thorough review, Sarah announced, we've uncovered significant financial irregularities within this HOA's records, including misuse of funds, fraudulent reporting, and unapproved expenditures. The crowd gasped. The neighbors looked at each other like, wait, so my $200 grass height violation paid for her Granite Island? Oh, it did. And the best part? The local news was broadcasting live. Karen tried to speak some garbled excuse about misunderstandings and delegated approvals, but the damage was done. Her fellow board members? Yeah, they scouted like pigeons at a fireworks show. One literally whispered, "I'm out," and walked away mid-interview. Another emailed their resignation during the press conference. And then came the real kicker. Sarah's team pulled up a visual, a giant board showing where every HOA fine had gone, color-coded, highlighted, annotated, and it looked less like a community budget and more like a Karen home improvement shopping list. The security upgrade line item, a smart doorbell system for her house only.
the community wellness project, her yoga deck, the beautification grant, her seasonal flower beds. Girl was literally robbing the neighborhood to buy begonias. You could feel the air shift. Neighbors who once muttered complaints now looked furious, and not just embarrassed, betrayed. Because this wasn't about petty rules anymore. This was corruption hiding behind a picket fence. And while all this chaos was unfolding, the HOA lawyer, the one who used to sit next to Karen at every meeting like her hype man, suddenly decided he didn't know her that well. He quietly packed up his briefcase and slipped away, muttering something about conflict of interest. Spoiler alert, that's lawyer speak for "I'm not going down with this ship." Now, remember how Karen used to brag that the board approved all her decisions? Turns out there were no official votes. Half those board meetings were just her cat, and a bottle of overpriced Chardonnay. She was literally signing her own approvals like she was president, treasurer, and auditor of her own delusions. And then came the cherry on top. Sarah's legal advisor announced that because HOA funds are collective assets, Karen's spending spree might qualify as embezzlement. Cue gasps, cue whispers, cue the sudden appearance of 2 state investigators scribbling notes nearby. The look on Karen's face? Priceless. You ever watch someone realize their entire empire was built on paper mache? That was her. Color draining, eyes darting, clutching her clipboard like it might sprout wings and fly her out of this mess. Karen built her throne on HOA dues and intimidation. But the moment those bank statements surfaced, that throne turned into a folding chair. She wanted power? She got audited. She thought her money moves were invisible, but when the spotlight hit, her community upgrades looked more like criminal upgrades. And trust me, Karen's next investment would be in a very good lawyer.
You know that moment in every crime drama where the guilty one, backed into a corner, decides their best move is to double down, to act innocent, point fingers, and scream, "Defamation!" while standing knee-deep in evidence? Yeah, that was Karen. Because just when we thought she might finally, mercifully take the L and disappear quietly into HOA history, she came back swinging, holding a cease and desist letter like it was Excalibur. It was the morning after Sarah's explosive press conference. The news vans were still idling at the end of our block, reporters sipping coffee and waiting for another headline. Neighbors were out on their lawns, swapping stories, sharing links, whispering about how they'd seen our street on Good Morning America. It was, quite literally, the talk of the town. Then, screech! Tires crunch. Karen's car rolls up like the villain returning for Act 3. She steps out, sunglasses on, lips pursed, and papers in hand, striding across the lawn like she's about to serve justice. Except what she was really serving was comedy gold. "Cease and desist," she declared, waving the letter dramatically. "You are to stop spreading falsehoods and defamatory statements about me and this HOA, effective immediately." The crowd blinked. Someone coughed. Even the wind paused to see how this was going to go down. Now, let's unpack this for a second. Karen, a woman caught on camera bulldozing a wheelchair ramp belonging to the governor of the state, currently under investigation for financial misconduct, had the audacity to accuse us of defamation. Ma'am, you bulldozed your own reputation. All we did was upload the footage. Sarah looked up from her seat, calm, composed, not even flinching. She glanced at the letter, then at Karen, and smiled, the way a teacher smiles at a student who just turned in a blank test. "Mrs. Thompson," she said, her voice like silk over steel, "before I read this, you do realize you've just entered a state property carrying a document that could be used as evidence of attempted intimidation during an ongoing investigation?" Karen froze. For once, her mouth didn't move. You could almost hear her brain buffering. Sarah continued, still gentle, still deadly. "I'm meeting with the state housing commissioner in 5 minutes. Would you like me to add this to the record?" And boom. Just like that,
Another misstep logged, time-stamped, and ready for legal review. But it got better. Because, plot twist, the state housing commissioner himself was inside our house. Yep, Karen had just barged into an active meeting with the very people reviewing her conduct. It was like walking into court and accidentally cross-examining yourself. The commissioner looked up, adjusted his glasses, and said, "Mrs. Thompson, I believe we were just about to discuss your leadership practices." Translation, you walked straight into the lion's den, and you're holding steak. Karen tried to pivot. "This is harassment. You're all conspiring against me." The commissioner raised an eyebrow. "Conspiring? Mrs. Thompson, there's documented evidence, video footage, and a financial audit. That's not a conspiracy. That's accountability." By now, the neighbors were gathering again, like moths to the flame of chaos. Phones out, cameras ready. Honestly, I think half of them were just waiting for her to spontaneously combust from embarrassment. Karen, however, was still in denial. "You can't do this. I'm the HOA president." "About that," Sarah interjected, "our team reviewed your appointment records. It appears you were never officially elected." The crowd gasped. Even the commissioner paused mid-note. Sarah nodded. "You assumed the role when the last president moved away, without a formal vote or filing. So technically, you've been operating without authority for over a year." I swear, if looks could kill, her reflection would have filed for witness protection. Her presidency, illegitimate. Her rules, void. Her fines, questionable. Everything she'd built, gone. And the cease and desist letter, officially repurposed as evidence. Karen tried to backpedal, muttering something about clerical errors and misunderstandings, but the commissioner wasn't having it. "Mrs. Thompson," he said, voice crisp and final, "I strongly suggest you refrain from issuing further legal threats until you consult an attorney, preferably one with actual legal training." That line hit like a thunderclap. The neighbors chuckled. One even shouted, "You might want to cease and desist yourself." The laughter rippled. Karen's face turned the exact shade of her blazer. She turned on her heel, or tried to. It caught on a sprinkler head, and she stumbled forward. Papers went flying. A metaphor, honestly. Her control, scattered. Her authority, gone with the wind. And as she scrambled to collect them, Sarah simply looked at the crowd and said, "This is why we follow the law, not ego." Applause broke out. Real, hearty applause. Karen scurried off. Cease and desist clutched to her chest like a participation trophy. By the time she got back to her car, the neighborhood had already turned her meltdown into memes. Cease and desist, more like cease and exist. New HOA policy, no Karening beyond this point. And somewhere deep down, Karen must have realized the more she fought, the more she lost. Because when you try to use fear to silence truth, all you do is amplify it. She came with threats, she left with evidence. Because when you try to silence justice, all you really do is hand it a megaphone.
You ever watch a power structure crumble in real time? Like that perfect, glorious moment when the person who thought they ran everything realizes they don't even run the Wi-Fi password anymore. That's where we're at. By now, our once peaceful neighborhood had become ground zero for the Karen-apocalypse. There were reporters camped out on lawns, hashtags trending on every platform, hashtag Rampgate, hashtag HOA-Ageddon, hashtag Karen versus Governor, and even one local bakery selling bulldozer brownies with little candy ramps on top. And right in the middle of it all stood Karen. Red blazer faded, hair frazzled, clutching what remained of her clipboard empire like a ship captain who just realized the iceberg is her own ego. Enter Tommy Chin, the YouTube lawyer. Yeah, that Tommy Chin. The guy who takes HOA horror stories, breaks them down like courtroom dramas, and turns them into viral justice epics. The man has more subscribers than most small towns have residents.
He saw our story online, the video of Karen bulldozing the ramp, the governor reveal, the press conference, and said, "Oh, this is content." Next thing we know, he's on a plane. Shows up at our doorstep, camera crew in tow, ready to drop legal truth bombs and merch links. Now, Tommy isn't your typical suit and tie lawyer. No, he's all charisma and sarcasm, the kind of guy who can recite federal code like slam poetry. He shakes Sarah's hand, looks me dead in the eye, and says, "Let's sue her so hard the HOA has to rebrand as a book club." Within 48 hours, he's assembled a dream team. Housing rights attorneys, ADA specialists, and more spreadsheets than Karen's nightmares can handle. The neighborhood, they're loving it. Finally, someone's fighting back, not just with outrage, but with legal firepower. And just when Karen thought things couldn't get worse, she calls an emergency HOA meeting. Classic move. Except this time, the room isn't empty. See, Karen's used to these meetings being ghost towns. A couple bored neighbors, a stale plate of cookies, and her monologuing about mailbox paint shades. But tonight, the community center is packed, standing room only, cameras flashing. Half the crowd is recording for TikTok, the other half brought snacks. Karen steps up to the podium, trying to fake confidence. "Thank you all for coming," she begins, voice trembling slightly. "There's been a lot of misinformation spreading." "Like you're accounting?" someone yells from the back. Laughter ripples through the room. Karen tightens her grip on the mic. "This meeting is to address recent violations or crimes." The laughter grows louder. For the first time, she's not in control. Then Tommy steps forward, sleeves rolled up, paperwork in hand. "Actually," he says, grinning, "this meeting is a perfect time to clarify some things." He slaps down a thick folder labeled HOA Misconduct Exhibit A. You could hear the mic squeak under the tension. He starts reading, one by one, every misstep, every violation, every act of discrimination, every misuse of funds. With timestamps, receipts, screenshots, Karen's face goes from pink to white to maybe I should fake my own death and move to another zip code. Neighbors start standing up to testify. "Mrs. Chen, she fined me for my garden. Mr. Rodriguez, he threatened me over a wheelchair lift. The Bakers, they called our son's playground an eyesore. The Jenkins, they made us remove a treehouse because it was visible from the street." And then from the back, a voice. "She made me repaint my fence twice because it wasn't the right shade of beige." Karen blurts out, "It was too taupe." The room erupts because honestly, when your hill to die on is taupe, you've already lost. Sarah wheels forward, microphone in hand, eyes steady. She doesn't raise her voice, doesn't need to. "Neighbors, this isn't just about one ramp. It's about all of us. About every time someone used rules as weapons instead of guidance. About every person who felt small in their own home." You could feel the shift. This wasn't just a grievance meeting anymore. It was a movement. Then Sarah reveals the bombshell. She's been working with state legislators on a new bill, the Right to Home Happiness Act, a law designed to stop HOA overreach, protect homeowner rights, and prevent this kind of abuse from happening again. The room explodes in cheers. Tommy high-fives a random neighbor, Mrs. Chen actually wipes a tear, and Karen, she's standing there gripping the podium, realizing the empire she built on fear just got voted out by joy. As the applause echoes, one of Tommy's assistants projects a clip onto the wall. Security footage of Karen signing false bulldozer authorization papers. The crowd gasps. Even her lawyer, yeah, she finally got one, slowly stands up, mutters, "Yeah, we're done here," and walks out. The vote happens on the spot. New board, new leadership. Karen? Officially removed. Not with anger, but with a unanimous, resounding, and very satisfying aye. It's over. The HOA has fallen, and in its place, something better. Kinder. Actually, human. Karen built her kingdom on fear and fines. But when the people found her voice, they didn't just take her title, they rewrote the rules.
You ever see one of those home renovation shows where the host walks into a disaster zone, peeling paint, bad lighting, questionable wallpaper choices, and says, "We're gonna make this place shine"? Yeah, that was our neighborhood. Except instead of paint swatches and throw pillows, we had policy reform and community healing. The day after Karen's great unraveling, it was like someone lifted a fog. For the first time in years, people were smiling on their lawns. No one ducked behind hedges to avoid clipboard patrol. You could breathe. It felt like spring after a long HOA winter. Sarah wasted no time. Her first act as honorary savior of suburbia? Rebuild the ramp. Better, brighter, and more beautiful than before. And this time, the whole neighborhood showed up. Contractors donated materials, kids painted signs that said, "Access is awesome." Even the bulldozer company, yeah, that bulldozer company, called to apologize and offered free labor to help rebuild. Talk about character development. When the new ramp was finished, it wasn't just a ramp, it was a work of art. Local artists came together to decorate it with floral murals and gentle glowing lights that shimmered at night. It wasn't gray and boring anymore. It was alive. A symbol of everything that had changed. People didn't just walk by it, they stopped to admire it. Kids even nicknamed it the Rainbow Road. And get this, every single violation notice Karen ever issued, gone. Poof. Deleted from the HOA's records faster than her credibility. No more fines for wind chimes, no more citations for unauthorized begonias. The new board shredded the old rulebook like a confetti cannon of freedom. In its place, a whole new charter built on empathy, fairness, and community. They even renamed the HOA Hertz of Access. Okay, maybe a little cheesy, but after years of living under a red blazer dictatorship, cheesy felt amazing. And remember that old violations office? The one where Karen used to sit like a suburban Bond villain waiting to hand out fines for fence heights and unauthorized begonias? Sarah turned it into a community help center. Now, instead of sending people warnings, the HOA sends welcome baskets. You miss a lawn mowing because you're sick? They'll show up with soup, not sanctions. Your roof leaks? They'll organize a repair team, not a reprimand. It wasn't just an HOA anymore. It was a homeowners alliance. A group of people actually helping each other live better, not live scared. And the symbolism didn't stop there. They started a program called Hands and Hammers, volunteers helping elderly residents with small repairs. They built ramps, fixed mailboxes, repainted shutters. They even set up garden days where folks could plant whatever they wanted. Yes, even Mrs. Chen's medical lavender came back in full bloom. Mr. Rodriguez got his wheelchair lift reinstalled, this time with a plaque beside it reading, "Accessibility is strength." The Baker's sensory-friendly playground? They expanded it, added a community sensory garden with textures, sounds, and colors for everyone. Even the kids who had grown up under Karen's rule started learning what real community looked like. And every Friday evening, like clockwork, people started gathering on their lawns, barbecues lit, music playing, kids laughing, the kind of peaceful, joyful noise that once would have gotten a noise violation notice. Now, it was encouraged. They even hosted their first neighborhood night, potluck style. Tables stretched down the street, fairy lights overhead, Sarah front and center, smiling like someone who finally got her Sunday back. As dusk fell, she stood up, microphone in hand, and said, "This isn't just a new chapter, it's a new book. We're not living by fear anymore, we're living by friendship." Cue applause, cue fireworks, literally. Turns out someone filed a permit for a fireworks show called Independence from Indecency. And somewhere, I swear the sound of Karen's teeth grinding echoed faintly in the distance. Now, here's the kicker. Remember that bulldozer company, the one that helped tear down the old ramp? They didn't just rebuild it, they launched a statewide initiative, free ramp installations for disabled residents. They even started a scholarship fund for students studying disability law, named after Sarah. Talk about full circle justice. By the time the dust settled, our once uptight neighborhood had turned into a model for inclusive living. Other HOAs from around the state started calling, asking for copies of the new bylaws. Local news dubbed us the neighborhood that fought back.
And honestly, we wore that badge with pride. Sarah always says you can bulldoze concrete, but you can't bulldoze community. And looking at our street, glowing ramps, gardens blooming, laughter in the air, she's right. Because this glow up wasn't just visual, it was spiritual. It was the kind of transformation you can't measure in paint swatches or bylaws, only in hearts rebuilt. The ramp was back, brighter than ever, but the biggest rebuild wasn't the concrete one. It was the one that turned a broken neighborhood into a beacon.
There's a certain kind of silence that follows chaos. Not the awkward kind, but the satisfying we actually did it kind. You know, that deep breath after the final chord of a great song? That was our street. The bulldozers were gone, the lawsuits were filed, and the neighborhood that once flinched at every knock on the door now laughed loud enough to echo down the block. The glow-up wasn't just cosmetic, it was cultural. People started greeting each other like old friends instead of weary co-tenants in a suburban Hunger Games. The old fear, the one that used to hum beneath every HOA letterhead, had vanished. In its place, pride, confidence, and a quiet collective swagger. Sarah, of course, didn't stop at ramps and rulebooks. That's not her style. She turned one personal fight into statewide momentum. Within weeks, she launched the Homeowners Protection Office. And guess who she tapped to run it? Yep, me. The sibling who once spent evenings shredding violation notices like confetti. My first task was poetic, teaching other neighborhoods how to turn their HOAs from bullies into helpers. We traveled across the state, community centers, town halls, even retirement villages, showing slides of before, yellow notices, frowning faces, and after, flower murals, smiles, ramps glowing like hope. Each presentation ended the same way. Applause, questions, and at least one person whispering, "Can you move to our street?" And the ripple effect? Massive. Other HOAs started calling themselves Access Alliances, borrowing policies straight from Sarah's playbook. A few even ditched the term HOA altogether, said it sounded more like harassment over anything. They rebranded as neighborhood councils, where the only thing mandatory was mutual respect. Meanwhile, the media couldn't get enough. Headlines popped up faster than Karen used to issue fines. From violation to victory, governor's ramp sparks statewide reform. The neighborhood that changed the rules. Wheelchair ramp becomes symbol of accessibility movement. Our phones buzzed non-stop. Universities wanted case studies. High school civics teachers requested clips for lessons on civic engagement. Even late-night talk shows cracked jokes about that one HOA president who bulldozed her career. And then came the sweetest twist. Karen's old house sold. New family, young couple, 3 kids, 2 dogs. And right there in their front yard, a shiny new wheelchair ramp for their grandmother. Not a single complaint. No angry notices, just 5 neighbors showing up with toolboxes and smiles to help them move in. That was the moment I realized we hadn't just fixed an HOA, we'd rewired an entire mindset. People weren't just tolerating difference, they were celebrating it. The same street that once punished accessibility now built it proudly, like a badge of honor. Sarah's ramp became a landmark. People literally gave directions using it. Take a left at the governor's ramp. Tour buses even slowed down for a peek, and every evening, when the lights along its rails flickered on, you could see kids racing up and down beside it, laughter bouncing off the pavement. What was once a symbol of conflict had become a monument to resilience. Professionally, Sarah turned the momentum into policy. The Right to Home Happiness Act passed unanimously, a rare bipartisan miracle. It guaranteed homeowners the right to reasonable accessibility modifications, transparency in HOA finances, and, my personal favorite, a clause banning fines for subjective aesthetic infractions. Translation, no more tyranny over taupe. And the Bulldozer Company, their redemption arc kept climbing. They sponsored scholarships for students in disability law, partnered with nonprofits, and even rebranded their fleet with a new slogan, building access, not obstacles. Every so often, Sarah and I host barbecues. Open door, open grill, this smell of charcoal, the clink of lemonade glasses, neighbors swapping stories instead of grievances. Kids chase each other around the garden gnome army Mrs. Rodriguez proudly displays, each gnome now wearing tiny helmets, safety first. When the sun sets, the lights on the ramp glow soft gold, and Sarah wheels up beside me with that half grin that means she's plotting her next reform. Crazy year, huh? Yeah, I laugh, from bulldozers to barbecues. And deep down, I know this.
The real victory isn't the headlines or the laws or the viral fame. It's the ordinary moments. Waving at neighbors instead of dodging them, hearing laughter where there used to be tension, watching inclusion become instinct. Because full circle justice isn't about revenge, it's about renewal, turning the site of a ramp's destruction into the foundation of a kinder world. We'd close the loop, from rubble to reform, from fear to friendship, but one final truth still waited at the finish line, a reminder that every ramp built upward is really a path forward for everyone.
There's a saying my sister likes: justice doesn't whisper, it rolls in with headlights on. And if you've seen a ramp bulldozed, rebuilt, and reborn into a state symbol, you know exactly what she means. By now, our little corner of suburbia wasn't just a neighborhood, it was a legend. People didn't talk about our zip code like a punchline anymore. They said it like a promise. Schools taught our story as a civics lesson. Legislators cited it in debates. Parents told their kids, see, stand up for what's right, even if you have to do it sitting down. Sarah's ramp, once the scene of chaos, became a pilgrimage spot for advocates and students. Folks came to see it not because it was beautiful, though it was, but because it represented something bigger. The moment everyday people realized they could push back and win. Every detail told a story. The smooth slope that once crumbled under a bulldozer's blade now gleamed in the sunlight. The railings, wrapped in soft lights, shimmered each evening like a gentle reminder. Accessibility isn't charity, it's justice. And standing at the top of that ramp, Sarah, smiling, waving to neighbors, chatting with volunteers, every inch the leader she's always been. Only now she didn't need a podium or a press conference to prove it. Her work, her life was the message. The neighborhood, once fractured, was now a family. We didn't just coexist, we collaborated. Mrs. Chen's lavender grew wild and proud along the fences. Mr. Rodriguez's left hummed smoothly, freshly painted by local teens. The baker's sensory garden bloomed in colors so soft and serene, you could practically feel peace radiate from the soil. No one feared mail from the HOA anymore, because now the only things they sent were birthday cards and event flyers. And when new families moved in, the first thing they saw wasn't a warning notice, it was a welcome sign that read, "Home is where everyone belongs." 1 year after the incident, we held a celebration. Not a ceremony, not a press stunt, just a block party. Music in the air, barbecue smoke curling up into the sunset, kids chalking flowers on the sidewalk where Karen once patrolled for unauthorized art. We set up tables under string lights, laughter bouncing off the houses, and right in the middle, that ramp, glowing softly, the centerpiece of our reborn community. When Sarah wheeled up to speak, the crowd fell silent, not out of obligation, but out of respect. She didn't need a speechwriter or applause cues, just truth. She smiled, that calm, unshakable smile of someone who's seen storms and learned how to dance in the rain. Tonight, she began, we celebrate more than a ramp. We celebrate a community that remembered what that word means. A place that turned fear into friendship, rules into rights, and neighbors into allies. We learned that power isn't in enforcement, it's in empathy. The applause was instant, loud, genuine. Someone shouted, "We love you, Governor!" She laughed, shook her head. Just Sarah tonight, because here, titles don't matter. People do. And I'll be honest, for a second I looked around at all those faces, all those glowing lights, and thought about how far we'd come. From that first violation notice to this celebration of unity. From a bulldozed ramp to a state law protecting homeowners. From silence to solidarity. Justice didn't come in a press release. It came in handshakes, shared meals, and the collective sigh of relief that filled the air when people finally felt safe in their own homes. And as the night wound down, as kids ran through sprinklers and neighbors swapped dessert recipes instead of complaints, I realized this wasn't just the end of a story, it was the start of a standard.
A blueprint for every neighborhood still living under the shadow of a clipboard tyrant. A reminder that accessibility isn't optional, that leadership without compassion is just control in costume, and that when you build ramps, you build bridges. Before we packed up, Sarah turned to me grinning. Remember when we thought one ramp couldn't change anything? I laughed. Yeah, guess we underestimated the incline. And there it was, the final lesson. Simple, but mighty. You can bulldoze concrete, but you can't bulldoze courage. You can break a ramp, but you can't break a community that chooses kindness over control. And sometimes the smallest fight, the one over a single slab of cement, can spark a revolution in how we live, love, and look out for one another. So, to every viewer watching, every neighbor listening, every person who's ever faced down a petty power trip, hold your ground. Keep your receipts. Build your ramp. Because when you fight back with heart and humor, justice doesn't just show up, it parks in your driveway. And if this story lit a spark in you, don't let it fade. Hit that like button, subscribe for more HOA wars, and share this video with someone who needs a reminder that community means everyone. Because in this neighborhood and in this channel, we don't just tell stories. We build justice, one ramp at a time.